Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we're looking at the SU-122, a Russian Rank 2 tank destroyer. And as with all reviews, if you want to see something in particular, like the simulator gameplay or the realistic gameplay, or just the final opinion, all that is in the timestamps for that are in the description below, so feel free to go click on those and go wherever you want to go. But if you'd like to hear the garage portion of the review, let's get started. So the SU-122 was designed in response to the success of the Stug 3 assault gun tanks that the Germans had. The Soviet High Command decided that we would like some assault guns rather. And the assault gun has a few advantages over traditional tanks. They don't have a turret, which is an advantage, but also its downfall. Without a turret, they're cheaper to make. You can make a lot more assault guns than you can turreted tanks because of how they construct the casement. It's just one big block. They don't have to engineer those, so it's cheaper. Also, the fighting compartment can be larger, so you can fit bigger guns. The crew members can operate those guns more effectively, and you can fit more ammunition and all kinds of things, for more fuel, all types of things. You can fit more of everything. And also, for the same price as a normal tank, you can put more armor on them. You can do different things to the tank that you can't do with a turreted tank because you have to keep your costs down to make it an effective mass-produced machine. You can't have machines be absorbently expensive and expect to pump out the numbers you need to win the war. And that's what the Soviet High Command was all about, was getting as many vehicles into the fight as possible and to overwhelm the Germans with just pure number superiority and big guns like the SU-122. So it's pretty clear from looking at the SU-122 that it's based off a T-34 chassis. They basically took the T-34, lopped the turret off, and made this whole upper casement one just big block of metal so they could fit the 122mm gun, the M30 howitzer, with 40 rounds of ammunition, because this tank it has more space in here. The crew compartment is much bigger. However, the sloping on the front of the armor, it has the same effective armor as the T-34, 45mm all around. That's basically what the T-34 has. T-34 has 40 on the sides and rear, and 45 in the front, but it's sloped back at about 60 degrees. On the SU-122, it's not. It's sloped back closer to 49 or 50 degrees, depending on where you point your cursor on this armor layout. So it has the same armor thickness, however it's not quite as sloped. The sides and rear, all same thickness. Doesn't really matter where you shoot this thing, you got to get through 45mm of armor. However, 45mm isn't a lot. It really isn't. Guns that this tank will see will certainly penetrate 45mm, even the effective 50 to 60mm, or even 70, that this tank can have thanks to the angling and sloping. However, I have noticed that a lot of times you can take a couple hits in this tank as long as you're angled, kind of like this. This is still 108mm, this is now 70, and over here is now 80, so it gives you that extra little bit of oomph to the armor. You will see in one of the replays I face hug a Panzer IV F1. Now the F1 shoots me multiple times but never penetrates, never does any damage, and we execute him. So the armor is effective for the lower tier tanks this thing will see, but the upper tier tanks like F2s, 3Ls, Stug 3s, anything with those longer 75mm guns or the 50mm guns will penetrate this tank no problem at just about any range. Your advantage, though, is that if you play this tank properly, you can have a 122mm shell hit them square in the face before they get a chance to really respond. Because this tank is a platform to carry this 122mm gun. That's what it was designed for. It's a T-34 that they made into a support tank to support infantry and to blow out strong enemy positions to allow attacking tanks and attacking infantry to effectively push forward. It also serves as a tank destroyer because it has such a large caliber round that those HE shells, more often than not, will wreck an enemy tank and disable it. Even there's stories of SU-122s being effective against Tigers, because they would just shoot it square in the face, and the explosive shell would either wound or kill the crew thanks to the effects of that shell hitting that big plate of armor and causing shrapnel or fragments to come off the backside of the armor, or just disabling the gun, disabling the tracks, blowing out the transmission. All kinds of things can happen with a 122mm HE shell. Obviously, the larger the caliber of the shell, the more effective, which is why the SU-122 kind of fits in the same boat as this tank. Everything I say about the SU-122 is effective with the SU-152. It's the exact same playstyle. So, if you like this tank, the SU-152 is basically the same thing. Now, in terms of weight, it's a 30.9 ton machine. It's not bad. 500 horsepower, 2,050 RPM, 57 km/h top speed. You will do 57 km/h. This is a very, very quick machine. In one of the replays, I'm going to be running around with some T50s, and I keep up fairly well. Now, they accelerate a little better than I do, but I get to the same speed, and I'm able to stay with them, which turns into a very nice wolf pack. Some very rapid-firing guns and the big punch to knock out the enemy tanks. So your engine power, it's almost 20. It's like, I think it's 19. No, it's 16. 16.18 horsepower per ton, which is pretty good. Power to weight ratio. That's pretty good. That means you can move pretty quick. That's one of the better ones in the game. Now, when you start talking about gun depression, gun elevation, 3 degrees of gun depression, 25 degrees of elevation, you need all that elevation to hit targets at long range. The 3 degrees of gun depression can be an issue because you notice that the gun is set about halfway up the tank. See? Right here. So that means when you come over hills, you have to come all the way over and maybe even somewhat down the hill to get the gun on target. The gun, and that's actually a weakness of this tank, that the gun is positioned so low, because you can be sitting on the bottom of the hill not able to shoot the enemy, but they can still hit you here or here, and that can knock you out. I've been knocked out like that before. However, the advantage of a lower velocity shell from this gun is that you can actually arc shells over hills, which you will see in replays as well. So let's talk about the gun more. I have a decent crew on here, and I've got the rate of fire, or the reload rate, down to 21.5 seconds. Pretty good. I'm sure it can go much slower. 122mm M30 howitzer, 40 rounds of ammunition. Well, let's look at that ammunition. You only get 2 shell types. And as with most Russian derp guns of the appropriate caliber, you generally want to load HE. I load, I think, 30-10 split, 30 HE, 10 heat. And the heat rounds, in my opinion, just aren't that effective. In real life, in World War II, these heat rounds were a new thing, and they weren't that effective either. They were somewhat poorly designed. And it's kind of apparent in the game, where it has 160mm penetration. Cool. It has a 335 meter per second muzzle velocity. Not cool. It's really bad. Honestly, that's quite unusable, in my opinion, except at extremely close range. But even at 100 meters, you might have to aim at the top of their tank just to hit their, like the flat frontal plate of a German tank. Whereas this HE is 515 meters per second. It's much easier to get on target, even if the effective penetration value is lower. If you hit the front of the tank, you're more often than not going to knock out the cannon barrel. You might knock out the transmission. You're probably going to kill some crew, or you'll just straight up knock out the tank by sending shrapnel into the crew compartment, and that'll do tanks in. A lot of times when you knock out tanks like Tigers, this tank doesn't see Tigers, but when you knock out tanks that you can't penetrate, a lot of times it's because you hit the face of the turret and the shrapnel went through the roof of the tank into the crew compartment, killing everybody. And that's a really, really effective way to use this tank. A lot of times you should aim for the face of the turret, because you'll either knock out the gun or the shrapnel will go in and kill everybody. And that's what you want. So this HE is what you want to use. Except at extremely close ranges, maybe you want to use this heat, but I don't see it. I prefer the HE big time. Now, the one big issue with this gun is the lower than average muzzle velocity. It's something you have to get used to. It's something you have to practice to really be able to get shells on target at normal combat ranges. But it's just simply playing with the tank and getting that practice and hitting those targets and being able to estimate range visually just by how large the enemy tank is and things like that, knowing what that tank looks like at 800 meters or 1,000 meters or even 500 meters. So that just comes with practice. But once you're able to, you'll see the results. So let's look at the layout of this tank. So we talked about the armor. Alright, the side of the tank is basically fuel tanks. If you hit the side of this thing, it will light on fire. From here back, hit it, it will light on fire. Same thing on this side, tons and tons of fuel tanks. The radiator, you got a couple radiators that just kind of sit on either side of the engine. Got the big old engine in here, rear mounted transmission, which is nice. However, the fuel tanks are all over the side. So you really don't want to unangle this thing too much, or else you're going to get hit in the side and set on fire, which is never good. But you can angle a little bit because the armor can protect the fuel tanks. Obviously, here's the gun. Driver sits in the front part behind this latch. You have the gunner behind him, machine gunner back here for some reason, loader, and commander. Now, usually you want to shoot for the larger side of the tank, which is right here, and that's exactly what you want to do with the SU-122. If you can put a shell right through the driver's hatch, you'll get the driver, you'll get the gunner, you'll get the machine gunner, you'll probably get the ammo supply too, and if there's any shrapnel, they'll probably hit the fuel tank as well. So that's a pretty good spot to shoot, right here, directly to the right of the gun, right in here, on the other side of the housing for the gun. You'll severely disable the tank. And if that didn't knock him out, and you've been shooting there and he's just not dying, shoot him on the other side, get his commander and his loader, probably some fuel tanks, that'll for sure do him in. So in terms of layout, it's kind of typical of a Russian tank. You know, it's very obvious where the driver is, and the gunner sits right behind him. And most of the time when you shoot a tank, the two people you want to injure or kill, driver, gunner, well, they're sitting right next to each other, so just pump a shell right through there, and you'll get both of them. So that's how you should fight this tank, is always shoot for the right half of the hull to be sure to get those guys. But if you're shooting on the side, anywhere will do. I usually shoot at the crew compartment, maybe right here, because there's a fuel tank behind that, and also the gunner and ammo and things like that. So that's a good spot to shoot as well. So as a quick overview, this tank carries a gun, and that gun is the whole reason this tank exists. It's a high-powered HE gun designed to knock out enemy tanks and support infantry. In real-life tactics, this tank followed anywhere between 400 and 600 meters behind the main attacking tanks, so T-34s and things like that. And it was used as support fire. It's like a medium artillery unit. Just kind of sits back, gets an idea of where the enemy are, and then lobs shells into the stronger positions to help the attack keep advancing. And that's its role. And that's how you should play. You should play with other tanks. You want to be you don't want to be the person they want to shoot. You'd rather be able to sneak up on them, pow right in the face, and then back up. And let your teammates go over and start shooting. Right? And you want your teammates to be taking hits, not you. And with this rate of fire, if you get soloed out, it's very hard to win those engagements because you can probably kill one of them, but if there's two of them, that second tank has a pretty good chance of knocking you out. So things to consider. But anyway, let's move on to the replays. So here we are on Poland. This is a simulator battle, and it's a 4-on-5 match. Now, my current strategy on Poland is generally to move into the city, regardless of which side I spawn on. For some reason, I find that when you control the city, and you have tanks in the city and around the city, you just win the game. I don't know why. I feel like the southern ridge is fairly important, and the woods to the north are fairly important, but it just seems that whenever I go into the city and make an aggressive push to control that city, we win. So that's my current working strategy. Now this game you're going to see a lot of running around and aggressive play, because we kind of take it to the enemy. There's a allied T-50, there's going to be another T-50 and a T-34 and some other friends. I think that's me, my SU-122, 2 T-50s and a T-34 versus the 5 enemy tanks. Now we've previously already spotted them in the fields to the north. They look like they're trying to flank our advance into the city. However, we're already here because the T-50s and myself can do 57 kilometers an hour. So that's pretty good. And there's a Martyr 3 over here, and he's going to be the first victim of derp. So there he is. We give the gun a little bit of elevation. We hit him right under the tank, and that gets all kinds of good stuff knocked out. Now, I hadn't played with this tank in a while, so my accuracy was a little bad. With that tank, it's not a bad idea to hit it straight in the gun shield, because this shell is going to blow up, and it's not going to over-penetrate, I don't think. I don't think it would over-penetrate the Martyr's gun shield. However, the second shot gets him good. We hit him right in the front plate. The shrapnel goes everywhere and just gives him the good news. So, that's one tank down. Now, we do know that enemy tanks are flanking to the east. So, I decide that I want to go over there and try and engage the enemy on this side, and then push back towards the cap. Because I don't think they're going to come in the city at this point. And we run straight into an enemy. However, for some reason my first shot missed and really didn't damage anything. But this F1 for some reason is just unable to damage me. I don't think it's my armor. It might be my armor. But he certainly wasn't shooting anything valuable. So I'm just face hugging him so he can't. The goal here was I didn't want him to get around my side. I mean, my armor's effective, the same effective thickness all over the place. But it's very well sloped in the front. However, once I'm reloaded, you know, he got the good news as well. So there's number 2. And now we've spotted another medium tank way out to the east. And he's an issue, because we don't want him coming around the side. So myself and a couple teammates are going to make our way over here to try and deal with him. But I am keeping in mind that I've killed 2 enemy tanks, and they should be respawning, because this is in simulator mode. You get the number of spawns your vehicle should get. So I know that they're going to be respawning and coming across this field to take, because they know where we are now. However, I spotted the Martyr. However, it's more priority to deal with this medium tank, and I'm pretty confident of the range I have in between myself and them, and then the lines of concealment thanks to these trees and bushes and things like that. I should be okay. And right now I'm looking for this medium tank. He's actually just behind that tree directly in front of me. But I'm going to get an idea where he is. There he is. I'm going to start lobbing shells at him. The first shell, I believe, went clean over him. And it's kind of... One of the bad things about HE is that it doesn't have a trail that you can watch. It just has... You just see the explosion on the ground, which is fine. But sometimes the explosion is pretty big, and it's difficult to accurately range a target. So at this point I'm just trying to get a reference. So that shell was pretty short. Now that guy hit me and actually damaged my cannon breech, but it doesn't seem like that's not really going to affect me. So I'm just waiting to reload. His second shot doesn't go anywhere near. I think he might be panicking a little bit. But time to mosey up to the firing position and keep trying to hit this guy. Gonna miss a few shots. This gun you have to get used to, and even when you're used to it and you have an idea of what the range looks like, even then sometimes you won't hit the target. A little unfortunate, but it's part of the game, right? I mean, he's only hit me once so far. I do like though how the HE shells send up all this like grass and stuff all over the place. We have 2 T-50s here with me, and they are going to push onto this guy. And I was telling my teammates that we have to watch out behind us because there's 2 tanks, a medium and a tank destroyer out there behind us. But at this point, I'm moving up because I want to be able to deal with this guy. And we have a pretty good sight picture of him here. And the first shot that I finally hit him with goes right through his front plate and knocks out everything. This is a Panzer IIIF. So his gun actually could be an issue for me, but at this range, thanks to sloping and slight angling, it really wasn't. So that's number 3. At this point, the Martyr, I assume it's a Martyr, is out in the middle of a field. It was a Martyr. It's out in the middle of a field, and that's not a great place for a Martyr to be. especially with 3 tanks bearing down on it. So we're going to attempt to move forward and take the fight to him. So I'm basically roaming around with a little kill squad of 2 T-50s and myself. I'm kind of just looking for him, staying in sniper view because a Martyr's gun can be really, really effective. So one hit from it might knock me out if it's well placed. And I'd rather get the first shot on him and try and give him the good news sneakily. However, my first shot, I thought I saw him. I think I did. I'm not sure. Can't confirm. But I send the shell and it misses. So now I'm just moving forward because the advantage in close range, I have the complete control in the close range engagements. I mean, usually you don't, but unturreted tank destroyer versus unturreted tank destroyer, I like my chances. It's a pretty close shot there. Right on 400 meters. Hits his front plate, sets him on fire, kills all types of things. He's disabled. His tracks are gone, his gun is completely wrecked. If you can, you should always try and knock out the enemy's gun. And now I know his exact range, 400 meters to the front plate of his tank, so I'm just going to put another shell right on top of him. And you can kind of see the variation of the shell. That first shell, I was a little bit farther away, and I aimed exactly 400 meters onto his front plate. That time I moved forward, put it on 400 meters, and I hit low, which would indicate that the shell dropped more there, even though I was closer. So, something to consider. The gun does have some RNG about it, but it is a big heavy shell being thrown at not a particularly high speed. So it's not gonna be that accurate at range. Which is why closing the distance is fairly important, and this tank certainly has the speed to do it. As you can see here, I'm slowly approaching that 57 km/h top speed. And our allies have knocked out a Stug A, and there's that medium tank in the city. He's going to get taken care of as well. While me and the 2 T-50s are going to move on towards the enemy spawn, because we know that's where the enemy are going to be. There's more derping to be had, believe me. Because now we have 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 receivers of the good news of our Lord and Savior, SU-122. And here's another one, a willing customer. It's the 3F that we knocked out earlier. He's right over here, behind, right up against this windmill. And this is where the gun depression kind of kills you. That would have been a great shot, but no, he's not 800 meters away. He's probably closer to 200. But I have to move forward, and it almost costs me, but his shell doesn't really do any damage to me, and my shell penetrates the side of his tank and wrecks him. So another one bites the dust. And now my goal here was there's another tank spotted, and I would much rather put this house in between me and him. But once I realized that he's behind the ridge on the other side there, I just kept moving forward because I want him to come over the ridge to me. It's a Stug 3A. And I'm not too concerned about his gun unless he's firing pure heat, but even then, pure heat is just very inaccurate. But I know he's over here. So I would much rather get him to come over the hill to engage me, just like he is, so I can get the first shot and wreck his tank. The first shot hits his front plate, doesn't really do any damage, but it does knock out his gun barrel. So he's disabled. He's going to be repairing. So now, I was going to tell my team, I was going to say cannon down, but that could indicate my cannon, and my cannon is just fine. So he's disabled. So now I'm just going to rush over this hill while he's repairing, to give him the good news. And this tank is really quick, so at close ranges like this, it's a very good strong tactic when you know the enemy don't have very many tanks left to just come over the hill and wreck him. So I fire again, and that shell, I hit him in his toughest armor and didn't do a lot, but he's completely disabled now. He won't be fighting me anymore. So I'm going to line up my shell to the back of his head, and as soon as it's loaded, I'll put him out of his misery. Make sure it's lined up right, and goodbye. Right through the back of the turret, or the casement, and into the crew compartment. So he's pretty toast. Now there is another enemy though, and it's a F2 who is down on the other side of the cap circle in the open field. So another target we need to spread the news to. Now I'm looking for him over here, but he's actually just behind the house. So I'm gonna need to get over there and engage. And the SU-122 does kind of excel in these quick engagements when you can isolate an enemy, disable him, knock him out, and then move on to the next target. But then again, most tanks do. But this tank does do really well in the supporting other tanks, like these T-50s. Being if there's a enemy who's in a really strong position, they can flank around while I try and pummel them from range, or advance and pummel them in the face. So here's an F2, very dangerous tank, very dangerous gun. He just fired, so I'm pretty sure he's not loaded yet. But my first shot takes out his cannon barrel, sets him on fire, gets his driver, his track, all types of stuff. He's pretty boned. So just in case, I'm keeping my armor angled, and I'm going to run up right next to him and coup de grace. And there you go, my friend. See you later. Give him a nice high five on the way in as well. So, he's dead, which is nice. But he's going to get one more spawn, because that was his first life, I guess. First life. And I think, at this moment, I thought, you know, oh, game's over, he's left, because hostile vehicles. But, no, he's going to spawn. So I'm going to tell the team that, you know, oh, hey, he respawned, so that they aren't surprised when he comes over that hill. But our friend the T-50 is going to go meet him. And I can't quite remember who knocks this guy out. We will see. I believe it's the T-50, the other T-50. But you can kind of see what this tank is really good for. If you can get the first shell on target, the tank is toast. The enemy tank is toast. More often than not, you'll damage their cannon barrel. Especially with the SU-152. If you shoot a tank in the turret, you'll always knock out its cannon barrel or cannon breech or something. And that usually means the tank is destroyed, because you're going to reload before they can fix it. And as long as you do that, you stand a really, really good chance of winning the engagement, assuming you have help and they don't have help. This tank is a support tank. It wasn't designed as a frontline powerhouse. It's supposed to be a little bit back from the attacking tanks and provide cover fire for dug-in positions and enemy strongholds. But it was a really fun game, very solid game. I think 7 enemy tanks received the good news. And, yeah. So, let's go ahead and move on to our next replay. So here we are in a realistic battle on Kuban in the SU-122. Now, my strategy this game is going to be to go north and run through that part of the map to basically to secure one flank, so I can turn my gun on the other and start lobbing shells onto enemy positions, while the rest of the team does the more upfront and personal tanking, because that's not what this tank's designed for, and you're actually going to see at the end of the replay why that is. But I'm just running along with this T-34, moseying our way along to this road up in the northern part that is actually fairly interesting. I've seen a lot of tanks who spawn on the western part of the map go to this road and then try and push through. A lot like how the northernmost spawn on the enemy team will do the same thing, and it turns into just a massive brawl a lot of times. This game not so much, but we're still going to see quite a few tanks. And realistic battles are, I think, if you don't want to play arcade and you want to play derp guns, realistic battles are what you should be playing. Simulator battles are difficult because it's more difficult to spot the enemies, and a lot of times you need your first shot to connect. Whereas in realistic battles, shooting over hills and things like that is much, much easier. And you're going to see a couple of those shots in this replay. But we're coming up over here. There's a whirlwind, or whatever it's called, over here, and I'm not convinced he can penetrate my armor at this range. However, he's certainly going to try. But before I could get the gun on him and certainly blow him away, a teammate knocks him out, which is fine. Saves me a shell. That's alright. But our entire team is pushed forward. This is a pretty full match. And that guy is in the cap. I'm trying to line up the shot, and he actually starts moving forward, but not quick enough. The shell enters the back half of his tank and knocks him out. So that's nice. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to go up onto this hill here and use the little gullies and stuff to try and send shells downrange onto targets near A and C and try and help secure those cap circles by eliminating the enemy tanks trying to get to them. Now I have to go to this second ridge though. The first one's a little bit too high to be really effective because they aren't that far away. So I need to get over this ridge to have a good picture on these guys. So there's the first one. And he's going to get the good news square in the side of the face. Well, in his feet. But he gets that one pretty good. But now they're going to kind of know where I am, which is a little unfortunate. But not before, I believe we get to shoot at this 3L, or 3J, I can't read. Whichever one it is. Just waiting for him to pop back up. There he is. He stopped. We took a hit, but that's okay. Because that shell hit his track, did some damage, that's alright. Disabling shots are just fine. But they do have a lot of tanks over there. So I'd rather secure... Basically, I'd rather eliminate the tanks near their spawn and then eliminate the tanks in the cap circles. Kind of work from the back to the front. Because these guys aren't going to have anyone shooting at them. Take a hit in the side, and that's actually kind of bad. Because now my loader's wounded, which means my rate of fire is pretty bad. But this 3M is over this hill, shoot right over the hill, hit him square in the side of the tank. Those are things you can do with low velocity guns. You can sit safely on the back half of a hill and shoot over the hill and have your shots land on the enemy. But now I have to take 6 cold dark centuries to load the gun. Losing your loader or your gunner is pretty bad in these derp guns because they just take forever to load. I think the KV2's reload rate of fire is like 40 seconds, at least on mine. And I can't imagine losing my loader and gunner or whoever, making that process take even longer. It takes forever. I don't know if it's 40 seconds, but you get my point. It takes a long time, and making it longer is definitely not desirable. But at this point, the enemy are kind of turning around the battle. I'm taking fire from over there, and there's an annoying AI here, but it doesn't really matter. AI will not be important. There is a 3M downrange, though, I would much rather shoot. And that shot doesn't connect, which is unfortunate. I would have obviously rathered it had, so I probably would have knocked him out or disabled him. But now I got to sit here and reload for a while, but I realize I'm kind of in the open, so I need to move forward and get on the back half of this hill to really stand a better chance of getting loaded and then get the shell off. But we're going to run into the main issue that this tank has. The armor is not that effective. It's decent at range, but in close range, it's going to be very difficult to bounce incoming fire. Especially when there's a group of enemy tanks pushing forward. A 3M and I believe a 4G are going to be problems. Ideally, you'd want to be engaging these tanks from the side or at farther range, but come over the hill, try to get the gun down on him, but I take it square in the face. Which is not good, but could have been worse. Right through the drivers, bam. So let's move on to the next replay. And here we are on in the final review of this final review of this review? No, the final replay of this review. I can speak English. We find ourselves on Poland in domination in a realistic battle. Now, there aren't that many players on either team, but that's alright. The key thing is that there's a friendly tank coming with me. It's going to be a T-34, which is nice. Because if I'm going to try and hold A, I really need, or B, I really need someone up here with me to keep the shells going down range while I'm reloading. And I'll come over the little rise to send that knockout punch. Because there's a few tanks coming over here. And the first target is going to be the rapid firing guns. Well, I mean, this 3J, I think it is, or 3L, just was the only target really available. The shell hits the base of his turret, knocks him out. Hitting the base of the turret is a really, really good spot because it allows the shell to go, it allows the shrapnel to go down through the roof of the tank, and that's the #1 way you're going to knock out tank. So we've capped the zone, which puts the pressure on the enemy to get up here and contest. And our allies have taken the northernmost zone, which is nice. And then we're going to have, our teammates going to be pretty instrumental in keeping them off the middle zone. I think the middle zone actually goes uncapped. But you can see this guy was trying to arc the shell just over the hill and hit the top of my tank. And I tried to do the same, but I didn't aim quite high enough. So now I'm reloading. And the Stug is actually going to come over the hill and shoot at the T-34. But we have to be very mindful of the tanks trying to flank around us. That's the way the enemy should have done this, is flanked around wide and then come in. But the F2 showed too much of his tank while I was loaded, and he received a 122mm helping of the good news. But now the Stug 3F is being a little bolder. He's engaging this T-34, and if he continues to come over the ridge, I'll be able to effectively engage him. However, this 3L is going to be a little bit of an issue. He actually hits me once, doesn't do any damage, and I'm able to not disable his gun. So now he has to back up and repair. And the T-34 is helping by keeping the fire on these guys so they can't just sit up there and wail on me. It also allows me to come over these ridges safely to put my shell out, because they're more worried about the T-34, who has the rate of fire, to really be an issue for them. Now that shell did some serious damage to that guy. Got his horizontal, vertical, track, and his driver. So he's disabled. It'll take him quite a while to repair all that. In the meantime, he's just going to be sitting there. So it's going to be a pretty easy second derp shot. But Allied tank knocks him out before I get a chance, which is fine. I get a very healthy assist for it. But now this 3L is either repairing or he's either repaired or soon to be repaired. So I don't really want to go over the ridge to him, but it seems like I'm going to have to, because he appears to not want to come over. And I'm trying to figure out where his gun is pointing. If it's pointing at me, I don't really want to go over the ridge. But at this point in the game, we have this locked up pretty good, so you can be a little bolder when the game is locked up. So shoot him in the face again, just to be sure that his gun is out now. He's on fire, he's severely crippled, and his ability to shoot me is going to be non-existent. So we can just pop over the ridge, aim for the driver's hatch, just to be sure, and send him back to where he came from. But the game is wrapped up. We have 2 zones, they have none. A's gone uncapped, and there's just a Martyr 3 running across the field, trying to get over here to do something, but, I mean, the game's over. He's stopped, so I'm going to give it a shot. But the shell doesn't connect, falls a little bit short. He's probably between 700 and 800 meters out there. But the game ends, and we win. A very, very quick, decisive win, and you kind of saw the power of this gun when you give it the chance to, when you can use it in more of the supporting role. It's an artillery piece. So let's move on to the final opinion. So final opinion time. What do I think of the SU-122? I think it's a very strong tank. It has a gun that is always effective, no matter what you're shooting at, no matter what position they're in. If you can see their gun, if you can see their turret, you can hit them and disable them and finish them off. Now you can also, because of the muzzle velocity, shoot over hills. So even if you can't see them, you can still get shells on target. And in extreme cases, you can use the heat to increase the arc of the shell to get over other hills. Now, it's not a tank that you want to be playing alone. Now, you don't really need a platoon, but you need to be around your teammates to be sure that you're not the only thing they can shoot at. You want to be able to use your team as potential, to take potential shots, because your tank, it's not a particularly sturdy tank. It has the same armor as, it has the same real thickness as a T-34, but it's not slow. It's sloped about 10 degrees less, 10 to 11 degrees less, which means a lot. It's significant. So it's really, really desirable to play this within a group of tanks and be that supporting fire to blast troublesome enemies. Or if you don't knock them out, disable them to the point where it's a very easy kill for your teammates. And it's always a good idea, if you have the opportunity, to tell your team what you've damaged. For example, if you shoot someone and their cannon barrel, cannon breech, horizontal drive, vertical drive, all that stuff gets knocked out, it might be a good idea to type to your teammates, you know, let's say you hit a Panzer IV F2, say, you know, the F2 doesn't have a gun right now, or the F2's gun is broken, or things like that. To let your teammates know that he's probably repairing now, you can go over and engage him and knock him out, and we don't have to wait back, because and that'll make your team move faster, and when you move faster, I think you win. So it's a very, very effective tank. The gun will be effective against everything you see, and can one-shot everything you see. Obviously, I recommend to always use HE unless you're in very unique situations where the heat round is the better option. Like you absolutely have to arc it over a hill, and you're fairly close to that hill, and you're pretty confident using a 300 meter per second shell, then by all means use it. But the only reason I carry it is in case I run into a very well-angled tank, and it's just, you know. But the thing is that if you have to switch shells mid-combat, you're probably not going to win. And the HE is overall the better shell, in my opinion. Now, the gun can be a little bit of an issue if you haven't used derp guns very much. This is sort of the first derp gun you get. So I'd recommend you take it into test drive. The targets in test drive are at fairly regular intervals and locations. I'd recommend you first go into test drive in arcade mode, so you can kind of see what the range is to each target. And then maybe switch to realistic and then to simulator and kind of get a feel for what the sights look like at each range, and how big these tanks look and things like that. So those are just some recommendations, but it's a really fun tank. It's a true derp gun, and everything you see will explode. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope it's helpful. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the comment section, and I'll be more than happy to take a look at them. But thanks for watching. I'm Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.